Hey, what's up everybody? This is Alfred from Practical Code Academy, and in today's video, I want to show you how you can create a flashing messages in your application. So I have here, I created 4 buttons. Each one of these buttons is going to trigger a specific message to the user or a flashing card. Sometimes you can call it snack bars. So if I click in the success message here, it will give me this success message that the file been uploaded successfully. If I click the warning message, it's going to give me that the file should be renamed. And as you can see, they are animated, fading in and fading out. Also, the error message here will give me an error message, and the info message will give me the message in this color, blue color. Here in this application, we trigger them by buttons, but you can use the same concept of this flashing messages or the snack bars in your application. For example, you're having a form and you're submitting the form and you want to show the user that there is an error in the validation of the form or that the form was submitted successfully. You can use this flashing messages. And as you can see, they can be stacked on top of each other and they're going to fade away. And they are very highly customizable. You're going to be able to customize the color, the time they actually appear to the user, where you want to put them in your screen. You can put them in actually here, they appear in the top right. You can put them actually in the top left, in the middle of the screen. I hope you're going to like it, and this will help you build your own application in a better way. Okay, let's get started. Okay guys, I'm going to start by creating the folder for our project here on the desktop. I'm going to call it Snack Bar. You can call it flashing cards or whatever you want to call this project. I'm going to open it with Visual Studio Code. Then I'm going to close the welcome screen. First, I'm going to start creating the files that we're going to need for this project. It's only 3 files, the index.html, style.css, and finally is going to be the snackbar.js. We're going to start by the HTML itself. For the HTML, I'm going to start with creating the boilerplate using the exclamation mark, and that's going to give me like a bare-bone HTML skeleton that I can work with. I'm going to change the title. I'm going to call it Snack Bar / flashing cards. And inside the body, it's actually going to have 2 parts. The first part is going to be a section that's responsible for showing this messages or showing this flashing cards. I'm going to create it first as a section. I'm going to give it an ID, Snag Bar Container. It's a lowercase s. And the second part here in the HTML is going to be the buttons that actually will be responsible for triggering this flashing cards. As you can see here, we have buttons, and when we click on them, it will trigger showing this section here, or the Snag Bar Container. So here, that's going to be our main section. I'm going to give it a class of container. And inside the class container, I'm going to create another section that will hold the 4 buttons together. I'm going to call it going to give it a class of btn group. That's the group of buttons that we're going to use to trigger this messages. And inside it, it's going to have the buttons. Each button will have 2 classes, one general for the padding and the margin called btn, and one for the button related class itself. So for example, this is the success button, so it have btn success. And I'm going to give a message success message. Let me actually open it with live server. And as you can see, here is our button. If you click on it, it's not going to do anything right now. Now I'm going to copy this button here 3 more times. The second one is going to be responsible for the warning. So it's going to be the warning button. And then we're going to have the error button. I'm going to give it btn error class. And the final one is going to be the info. Here, the info message. And if I save this, I will see the 4 buttons. And as I said, they're not going to do anything. So for now, we need to populate this section here. But just to see how we can style it, eventually we want to populate it using the JavaScript. But for now, we're just going to fill it with a paragraph of a flashing card or an error message. So it needs to have a class of a snack bar. And also, I'm going to give it an error class, assuming this is an error message. And I'm going to tell the user error form is not valid. Also, let's save this and see how it looks like. So this is our error message, as you can see it. It's no compare with our error message that we have in here, but we're gonna style it to look like this. And as I said, I'm putting this line for styling so I can see what I'm styling. And later on, we don't need it. Actually, we're gonna populate this container dynamically using the JavaScript. But for now, it's fine to see what you're styling. Inside this paragraph, I'm gonna put a span. I'm gonna close the span here, and I'm gonna put times entity. And the times entity will actually put this X next to it. And we need it if the user wanna dismiss the message. Okay, that's it pretty much for the HTML. One more thing that I forget to link my styling sheet and also get my JavaScript file. So it's going to be a script source snackbar.js. And that's it for the markup. It's pretty easy. We have a container for our flashing cards messages that every one we're going to stack it inside it as a form of paragraph. And we're going to have a main container that will have all of our buttons that will trigger this flashing card messages. Okay, that's it for the markup. Let's move on to the styling. For the styling, let's see how that effect here. So I'm gonna use the wildcard selector to reset the browser default. So I'm gonna set all the margins to be 0, all the paddings to be 0. I need to set the box sizing to be a border box. Next, I want to target the body and style the body of the HTML. I'm going to give it a height of 100% of the viewport height, and also give it a width of 100% of the viewport width. Also want to change the default font. So I'm going to do font family Arial. So now we're going to have the Arial font. Next, I want to display it as a flex. The reason I want to display it as a flex because I want to put all this 4 buttons in the middle of the screen. So they're going to be centered horizontally and vertically. To do so, the easiest way is just display flex. And justify the content to center. And then align items. Align items to the center. As you can see for now, we have the error message also centered in the screen, but later we're going to fix this by giving it the position fixed to the top right. But for now, that's look good. Next, I'm going to style the buttons themselves. So I'm going to access the btn class. Each button of them is going to have a btn class, so I need to style it. First, I'm going to set the outline to be none. Then I'm going to set the border to be none. I'm going to give it a background color of a light gray, which is CCC. I'm also going to do a padding of 1 rem or 1.2 rem. Top, bottom, left, and right. Now they're getting a little bit bigger. And size, I'm going to also give it some margin to put some spaces between them. Let's say 1 rem. much better. Also, I'm going to need to change the font size of the text inside of each of the buttons. I'm going to set it as 1.2 rem. For the border radius, I want to make the corner rounded a little bit, so I'm going to set 5 pixels, and then going to make the corners to be rounded a little bit. Also, I want to, when I hover over them, as you can see, the cursor is not a pointer anymore. You cannot know if this button that need to be clicked. So I'm going to change the cursor as a pointer, and now when I hover over them, it will be a pointer indicating that you can click on them. Now I want, when I hover over them, to be a little bit darker color. So I'm going to select the BTN class again with the hover pseudo class. I'm going to set the background color to be a little bit darker color, which is AAA. And now when I hover over them, you get a darker color. That's much better. Now I need to work with the Snag Bar Container here that will have all these messages. I can put out multiple messages for now, just to demonstrate that. Let me put another 3 messages. So the first one is the error, success, and then warning, and then info. So I'm going to change here success. And actually, you can wrap the error here with a p tag here. You can do the same for the success, warning, info. As I said, this is just for our styling purposes. We're not gonna add them to the markup like this. We're gonna do it through the JavaScript. But for now, that's fine. Just wanna look at the class layout that we made. So the section here, having an ID of a Snag Bar container, this is the container that will have all the flashing cards. Each flashing card have a Snag Bar class and a specified class. So if it's an error message, we'll have an error class. If it's a success message, we'll have a success class. Let's go to the styling. For the Snag Bar container, for the container itself, we want to position it fixed. As now, when you set it as fixed, it will be taken out of the context of the markup, or where on the screen, and it's going to show in the middle of the screen right now. I want to position it to the top right. So I can do that using top 2%, right 2%. And that will put them on the top right here. Okay, that's perfect so far. Another thing we want to do is give it a width. The width is going to be 300 pixels. And that's going to be the width of the whole container. And also I want to display as flex, and I want the flex direction to be column because they're going to be on top of each other. That's for the container. Now for each snack bar, and remember each of these errors here or success messages having a snack bar class. The snack bar class, I want to set the padding 1.5 rem, top and bottom, left and right to be 1 rem. Okay. I also want to give it a margin, top and bottom, left and right to be 0.5 rem. Okay, look better. I want to give it a width. It's going to be the same width of the container, which is 300 pixels. I want to give them a border radius of 10 pixels. I want to do box shadow to give it a little bit shadow, drop down shadow, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 5 pixel RGBA of 0, which is black 0, 0, 0, and the alpha color or the opacity 0.7. And as you can see, this is just how we're going to style them, not the background color. The background color, we're going to change it using the error warning classes. I'm going to give it a color of white because I want to change the color to be white for the text message. And now you can see nothing because the color matching the background color. To fix this problem, let's add the error class. So the error message will have a background color of red. And now this is the error message. And now the success message will have a background color of green. Good. The info message will have a background color of Dodger blue. And we're left with the warning. And I have a background color of gold. But the white, as you can see here, it's hard to read it. So I'm going to change the color here to be black. And these are our error messages. There is some stuff you need to be fixed, like getting this pen all the way to the right. All these X's need to go to the right. So let's fix this right now. It's an easy fix. I can access any Snag Bar message. And I'm going to access this pen that's inside it. And I'm going to float it to the right. And I also, when the user hover over them, be able to click them. So I'm going to set the cursor as a pointer, and now they can be clicked, and the cursor is pointer. We're not going to do any functionalities for them because all these flashing messages will be fading out, but that's good so far. Now we want to create the animation. How are they going to appear? Because right now they just appear right away. So to create the animation, we're going to use keyframes. And we're going to call the animation fade in, fade in. And the animation at 0%, when they start to show, we want the opacity to be 0. And when it's 100%, we want the opacity to be 100%. This is the fade in. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to make a fade out keyframe. And the fade out is going to be the complete opposite. At 0%, it's going to be 100%. Actually, the opacity is 1. This is a mistake. The opacity 1. And when it's 100%, I want it to be complete disappear. So I'm going to set the opacity to be 0. I save that. It's not going to make any changes. You just define the keyframes. Now, to use the keyframe, you need actually to go to the Snag Bar itself, the class Snag Bar here, and set the animation for it. And first you specify what type of animation you want to use. Initially, I want to use the fade in. That's the one that we define it, the keyframe down here. This is the name that we're going to use. So we want to use fade in, and we want the duration to be 3 seconds. So it's going to fade in 3 seconds. And the animation type is going to be ease. And if you save that, as you can see, they're going to show up here. They're going to take 3 seconds to show up. They're going to fade in. This is the animation we're using right now. Okay, that sounds good. The fade out, we're going to use it in the JavaScript actually. When the user clicks on it, we're going to make it fade out after it's fade in. To use a fade out, I'm going to create another class. I'm going to call it fade out. And the fade out is going to be actually a copy of this line that we want it to be fade out. And we want 1 second to fade out. This is the time. And we want it to be delayed for 2 seconds. We want the fade out take effect after 2 seconds. So that means that it will be appearing for the user for only 2 seconds, then it's going to start to fade out. And we want it to go forwards, that it will keep fading out. So for now, if I put the fade out here for the error message, fade out, as you can see, it will disappear. Any item here, I add the fade out class, it will start disappear after 2 seconds. And that's the whole idea of creating this class. We're not going to use it here, and we're not going to use any of this here. I'm just putting them here to see what I'm styling. All these classes, all this element will be inserting using the JavaScript. So we're done from the styling, we're done from the markup. Now I'm going to delete everything here. So you're not going to see all these cards. And we need to add them using the JavaScript dynamically. We don't want to add them here statically. We want when the user click the button, the error message or the warning message show dynamically. For that, I can close actually this too here and start working with our JavaScript file. In our JavaScript file, the first step, I'm going to need to get a reference for all the elements that I want to manipulate. So I want to get a reference for all these buttons to variables or constants. I also want to get a reference for the container of the snack bar because that's where I'm going to push the flashcards message to it. So I'm going to start with the error button. So I'm going to give it a constant or create a constant. I'm going to call it error ptn. And that I'm going to go grab it from the document. I want to do query selector to select it from the DOM. And if you remember, it's have a ptn error class. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the other 3 buttons. However, the second one, success button, then the warning button, then finally the info button. Oops, it's ptn info. And here, warning, and here, success. Okay, this is for the 4 buttons. The other thing that I want to get hold on it is the container for this flashing cards. I want to get hold on it so I can push the messages to it. So I'm going to create a constant snack bar container called document dot. And if you remember, the snack bar container wasn't having an ID, so I can get the element by ID. And the ID was called snack bar container. That's all good. Now we need to create the function that we're going to use to trigger all these error messages. So I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call my function snack bar. And I need to pass 3 arguments to this function. The first argument will be the type of this message or this flashcard. What do you want the type to be? You want it to be error, you want it to be info or success flashcard or warning. So the first argument will be the type. The second argument will be the message itself. What do you want to tell the user in this flashing card? You want to tell him that his form needs to be validated, that you cannot read the file, he cannot access anything. So the message that you're trying to send to the user. And finally, you want to pass the time, how long you want this message to appear to the user before it starts to fade out. And we're going to start here by creating the paragraphs that we're going to push. As I showed you before, you need to create a paragraph and push it inside the Snag Bar container. So to create a paragraph, I'm going to create a constant. I'm going to call it para, and I'm going to use the document dot create an element, and the name of the element is just P. It's a paragraph. And for this paragraph, if you remember, it must have the Snag Bar class for the styling. So I'm going to give it a class list, add Snag Bar. And that was for all of them, the error and the success. All of them, they must have a Snag Bar class. For the inner HTML or the HTML for this paragraph, the message itself, I'm going to use the string templates here. So I'm going to using a backtext, which is the key that is left to the 1 in your keyboard. So I'm going to use the backtext, and I'm going to pass in the message that I want to show to the user. And next to that message, I want to have my span that will have the times entity, and then I'm going to close the span. That's for the HTML of this paragraph. Now, we need to, based on the type, to add the class to this paragraph. If it's a type error, we want to add the error class. If it's type success, we want to add the success class, and so on. So we're going to do an if simple check what you're passing to this function, the type. If the type is equal to error, or this is an error flashing card, we want to access the para, and we want to add a class using the class list add, and this class will be the error class. Similarly, for else if the type was success, what I want to do is I want to set the paragraph class list, or adding a class to the class list. In that case, it's going to be the success class. I'm just going to keep copying the else if here 2 more times. For the third condition here, we're going to have the warning, add the warning class. And finally, the info. We're going to have the info class. Now we have this paragraph ready, but we didn't push it yet to this Snag Bar container. To add it to the Snag Bar container, you need to get a hold of the Snag Bar, which we already did. This is the Snag Bar container constant, and we're going to append a child to it. And the child that we're going to append is this paragraph. So we're going to pass the para to it. Now, if you remember from the styling here, the fade out class, it have a delay of 2 seconds. That means the message will show up if I give any of this elements a fade out class. It will start to fade out after 2 seconds. So if it's 2 seconds, I can give it here a class to my paragraph. So if you want your message to stay more for the user, you can simply here change this 2 seconds to 3 seconds or 4 seconds. This will indicate how long your message will stay on the screen before it get fade out. And this is the animation time of this fading out, how fast it is. Now it's 1 second. Okay, now since it's going to fade out, but it's still inside the HTML markup, we need to take it out from the container or the Snag Bar container. To take it out, we want to set a timeout. After a certain amount of time, we want to remove it from the Snag Bar container. And this time here, we want it after the time that you want to pass it through this function here. So after how long you want to remove it from the markup. So based on that time, the set timeout will execute after that time. The Snag Bar container, we want to remove child, and that child will be the paragraph that we added. So technically, we adding the paragraph to the container, then we start initiating the fade out process. And after the fade out process, we want to take it out of the markup or the HTML after this certain amount of time. Now this function is completely ready to be used. We didn't use it yet. So to use it, if you remember, we want to use it when we click on this button. So I need to add an event listener for every single button here. To do so, I'm going to first start with the error button. I'm going to add an event listener. And the event that I'm interested in here is the click event. And when the user click it, what I want to do, I want to run anonymous function, and I'm using the arrow function here. And this anonymous function will call our Snag Bar function. So I want to do a Snag Bar function, and I need to pass the argument. Since I'm clicking in the error button, I want to pass an error message. So the type will be an error. The message is whatever you want to tell the user. So you can do something like, I'm going to make bold error. You can pass a markup here. It's fine. Form validation error, or something like that, wherever you want to tell the user. For the time to be delayed, I'm going to put 3 seconds, and you put it here in milliseconds. Okay, Why I put 3 seconds? This have to do with the styling here. So this styling, it will take 2 seconds for the user to be delayed to see it, and 1 second to fade out. So the sum of the 2 and the 1 is going to be the total 3 seconds before I want to take it out to the markup itself. So this time here, I'm adding here, it's based on these 2 numbers. If you want to change these 2 numbers, just add them and pass it to the number here, which is the time. That's it. Let's give it a try. For the error button, we wire up the error button. As you can see now, it's fading in and it's going to start fade out. That was a little bit fast. It's not fading out. So I believe there's an issue here. Yep, the class here, I call it fade-out. And here, I'm calling it fade out. There is no dash. So I'm fixing this. I'm taking out the dash from here. Also missing the E here. So it's fade out. That's matching to the fade out here. And now it should work. So if I click in the error message now, as you can see, it's going to show the error message and I'm going to start fading out. Now it's working perfectly. And if I can keep initiating more than one error message, they're going to be stacked on top of each other and they're going to start fading out and delete it from the markup. Okay, now let's wire up the other buttons. So I'm going to copy this 3 more times. So that for the second one is going to be the success button. And we want to send the success message. And for the third one, we're going to give a warning message. I'm going to call it warning. And finally, the info button here, I'm going to give it an info type. And I'm just going to change the error to info. And this here, instead of error, I want to give a warning. And for the success, it will be success. And I'm just calling the function that will be responsible. So for this code, we only create this function and it will be responsible for this flashing cards. So if I save that, go back here, success message, it will fade out, warning message, it will fade out, error message, and so on. You can have all the type of the flashing cards here. You can stack them on top of each other. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you find this video helpful and you can use it in your own projects. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe now to get our latest videos. And if you do like the video, please click the like button, and see you in the next video.